Hello fellow classmates and Professor Swanigan. Today I'm going to be giving you guys a speech on how computers generally work. So bear with me, my inner nerd's going to be coming out just a little bit. But before I get started, I wanted to pose the question of how have you observed the growth of technology and computers in your life in the past 10 to 15 years? Lily Rothman, a writer for Time magazine, wrote, when Alan Turing submitted his paper on computable numbers in 1936, he could not have guessed that it would lead not only to the computer as we know it today, but nearly all of the gadgets and devices that are so crucial as a part of our lives. So in the past 10 to 15 years, we have seen an evolution of cell phones going from the fantastic flip phone to the ginormous touchscreen cell phones like mine. We have gone from floppy disks to CDs to MP3s. Even the cars that we drive today are all being ran by some sort of advanced technology or computer. We see computers being integrated and used throughout the world and will only continue to become more prevalent in everyone's life. Technology has been always a little more to me than just a way to pass the time. I've always been interested and intrigued with technology and computers and like to figure out how it all works. And since then, I have built multiple computers and continue to work on them. So in the next 5 minutes or so, I'm going to explain the general functions of how a computer works and the different components that are used to help it function. Rothman explains computers as just a bunch of switches and computing of ones and zeros. But in today's day and age, computers are looked at as extremely complex and difficult to understand how they operate. This does not have to be the case though, because when looking at what generally makes a computer, there are only 4 things that are needed in order to make it considered a computer. These 4 things are input, memory, processing, and output. And the first function we're going to consider is the input. The input is any signal that goes into the computer. This can be everything from your mouse to your keyboard. It can be your finger on a touch screen. It is also your microphone or your webcam. It's any information that is getting sent to your computer so it can be processed. That being said, leads us to our second function of a computer that we will consider, and that is the processor. The processor, which is this little guy here, is also known as the Central Processing Unit, or CPU for short. Intel is a brand of processor that you've probably seen commercials for or heard about in the past. Mike May, the author of Coming to Grips with Computer Hardware, describes the CPUs as the motor behind your software that does the bulk of your computer's thinking. The processor is easily one of the most complicated parts of a computer just because of it being a super small little microchip that is able to process so much information very quickly. It is also the most important part of any technological device, including our cell phones, our TVs, even our cars have processors in them so that they are able to process information. One thing that I specifically think is interesting about processors is that they only process one thing at a time. There's a little wire that turns on and off inside of the processor, and the way it processes so much information is because this wire turns on and off several billion times a second, and in doing so it gets very, very hot. So now that we've considered the processor, we can move on to the third function of a computer, which is just as important and communicates directly with the processor, and that is memory. Now there are a lot of different types of memory, and the main ones we're going to consider are the memory storage and the RAM. Memory storage is just like this hard disk drive here. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It stores things like documents, pictures, videos. Any information that is communicated with the processor goes into memory so that it can be retrieved at any point in time. Another type of memory storage that I'll cover quickly is the USB or flash memory. It's very common with students and business people. And for the RAM memory, which is these guys, I like to think of as the short-term memory. Mike May refers to this as the computer's workspace. RAM stands for random access memory. It allows the computer to accomplish different tasks at the same time and access, hence the name, different parts of the computer quickly. For this reason, a lot of the time when people's computers start to bog down or become slower, instead of trying to buy an entirely new computer, I like to recommend looking into upgrading the RAM. It might help speed things up a little bit. But lastly, the main thing of a computer that I want to consider is the output. The output is exactly what you think it is. It is everything on your screen. Anything that you hear, anything that you see. The output is the end result of all the other things put together. The output consists of monitors, like this guy. It is your speakers that you have. It's also your printer. But those are the four main things that make a computer: the input, the processor, memory, and output. So as you can see, when broken down and looked at generally, a computer isn't too complicated to understand. Those are the four general functions that make a computer and allow it to work. So I hope that after the speech you will have learned something new and walk away with a general understanding of how these components are used inside a computer and allow it to work. So the next time you reach down to grab your cell phone, turn the TV on, or even log into this class, think about the different things that are happening to allow this technology to be possible, and think about how far computers have come and where they might end up in the future. Thanks for listening.